Set. Good. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mike, we can actually see the American flag over your right shoulder. So thanks for providing that for us. So I'm going to ask for the approval of the agenda. If there are no modifications, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that's carried. Consent agenda. If there are no comments on that, I'll take a motion on the consent agenda as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that's carried as well. Thanks very much. Old business. Mr. Jilk, you have prepared a memo for us in regards to budget priorities. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yes, I'm trying to share my screen here with the item that we sent out to you. See if that can work. We got it, I think, right? Why aren't we getting it up there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see something.
Yeah.
Go back to and stop sharing.
This one? All right. Do you see it?
We
There
do.
go. Thank you. All right. Based upon the direction that I had received in the last couple of meetings of the commission, and based upon the special work sessions that you've had over the last couple of months, and starting to develop some priorities for moving into the 2021 budget. My understanding was that you asked me to take a look at the listing of all of those priorities and new initiatives that you discussed and group them into general areas of consideration, and then start talking about potential budget implications in terms of staffing and resources to take those initiatives forward. So that's what I attempted to do with this memo, and just quickly walking through that, what I've done is group those into general areas of water, energy, broadband, fiber optics, and broadband and fiber optics. One of the things that Commissioner Deshmani mentioned at a previous meeting was that even though those two are definitely related, we need to look at them as separate opportunities. And then communications, we talked about developing a much more robust method of communications within the community, Whatcom County, your constituents, as well as relationship with other government agencies and the work that we do with other entities such as the county, cities, tribes, and so forth. And then as a core mission, we also wanted to identify ongoing infrastructure, our own infrastructure that we have in place, And then, of course, looking at potential staff transitions, not only to deal with these new initiatives, but also looking at retirement and restructuring of our administrative staff and our operational staff as going forward. So I moved that into looking at some sense of what I gathered was your prioritization on all of those areas. And so based upon the discussion that was held a couple meetings ago, we actually did a checkoff, if you would, and all three of you commissioners indicated what you thought your number one, number two, and number three priorities would be. And we, based upon those discussions, we think that these are the priorities that you had indicated. And number one would be continuing and even broadening our involvement in water resource management, which would include watershed management, climate change, the impact of climate change on our operations and our water supply, looking at adjudication, the potential for adjudication, and then continuing support for water association, but moving that on to support for private well owners. And I did not indicate in that line item, but also looking at broadening our work with Group A water associations to more involvement with Group B, the smaller water systems. And then looking at, continuing to look at development of new water projects like the Cold Stream Dairy project that we've been involved in. And then number two, broadband and fiber optics services to the community. And then looking at potential for community solar and projects in the community. As I said here, we wanted to keep in mind that the above three, water resource management, broadband, fiber optics, and community solar would be either considered new initiatives or a broadening of current projects and programs. And they are in addition to what the district has already ongoing, including responses to new projects. So if we have interest shown by private entities in the community to engage with the PUD on projects that are not specifically listed in that 1, 2, and 3, it doesn't mean that we're simply going to ignore those requests for engagement. But these, based upon our discussions with you and over the last several months, we feel that these are the priorities that you want to move forward with. So when we look at staffing, what you had indicated to me a couple of meetings ago was that we should bring forward maybe 3 different scenarios in terms of staffing, looking at current core operations. What would we be looking at in terms of changes with staffing and staff support? Number 2, that if we would look at new initiatives, adding to core operations, what would staffing requirements look like? And then 3rd, we have to keep in mind just specifically the issue of retirement and replacement of potential retirement situations with staff. And rather than taking that approach, what we've suggested here is that we just want to look at staffing in general, and what we've suggested that if we are directed by the commission to further our efforts in energy, broadband, fiber optics, water resources, and then look at the same time, look at retirement potential over the next 2 to 3 years. These are my initial recommendations on moving forward, and that would be to, as indicated in the memo, add a staff person to support our work on energy, use a current staff person to move into much greater support to Rebecca Slauterbach in managing our water resources, which our involvement with watershed planning, work on the grants and projects that we have already taken on, and look to possibly take on additional grants and projects. And then also looking at the issue of climate impact and work as more of a lead representation from the PUD to other agencies, which would, such as the Watershed Management Board, the Puget Sound Partnership, and so forth, that would relieve some of the time that I currently spend in those areas, and that would free up some of my time to work on some of the new initiatives. And then that we would, if we would move a current staff person into support for water resources, then we would fill that person, that position, possibly with a civil or electrical engineer to support some of the projects that we expect to take on over the next couple of years, such as the substation rebuilds, and some of the additional water projects that we would take on. So, and then, as we've talked about in the past, my position, if we would take these steps, as I've indicated here in the memo, on staffing and some of the new initiatives in 2021, that it would give the commission an opportunity to really define much more clearly what you would be looking for in replacement of myself over the next year or so as general manager. So with that, I just open it up to questions or your discussion.
Thank you, Steve. So I think just as a reminder to my fellow commissioners, I think what we're really, there's a lot in here. And thank you for distilling this, Steve. I know that we put a lot on your plate in terms of priorities, and I think we've had the opportunity over the past couple of meetings to share ideas and identify commonalities in terms of priorities. Really, our task today is to give you some direction on budget as you guys move into the more detailed aspects of preparing that budget, which of course is somewhat impacted by these staffing positions that you have identified. I mean, we'll still have plenty of opportunities to identify, if we decide to add these staff positions, what those attributes of those people are and get into that. But this is a good time for us to kind of check our priorities now that we've seen what you feel the organization would need to add in order to support these things. So we'll focus on that, I think, today. And as you said, I'd like to hear what both Mike and Atul have to say at any questions we have. Who would like? Okay,
Mike, is that good?
that's fine.
So the what I'm reading as kind of the punchline is a 2 additional staff in the PUD as it relates to technical, and both of them being technical. One being more energy and broadband focused, and the other one being more infrastructure focused. Existing plant. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes. Yes.
I really support that general approach. I mean, a general outcome. I do have I need to explain a few things as I understand them. I mean, the PUD is truly evolving, And these are, both of these steps are important steps towards serving the community more fully. And one of the things that has been a new development, which has been an organic development of what the PUD has done over the last many years, is the expansion of support by the state for our initiatives on the waterfront. I feel like all of the, or not all, many of the ideas and intentions that the PUD has had to intelligently, constructively serve our community on the waterfront for years got support, but not full support. But I feel like we're taking a pretty big step from the state as far as getting additional support for what we're doing. So is it realistic to say that one of the additional heads is largely aligned with growth of grant funding and the actual additional head on the broadband and energy side is not currently supported by new sources of revenue, but of course that would be the aim based on the emphasis at the state and the federal level on broadband and fiber. So what I'm saying is that, is it realistic that the additional services related income that we receive will effectively cover these two heads?
I'm not, could you ask that question again? I'm sorry, Atul, I didn't quite get that.
So basically, I'll try to be more concise. I see these two heads, and I'm thinking about how are they aligning with our financial operations, our revenue. And we, of course, receive revenue for sale of utilities, but we also receive revenue from the state and other funding agencies. And is it realistic that both of these additional heads would line up with additional revenue from those sources, either on the broadband front, and I think already we can assume that on the waterfront?
Well, I think at this point, if we proceed with, as we've identified, these two priorities, and if we try to align staffing needs to proceed in implementing, or I should say, continuing and broadening our work in these two areas, I think that we will be challenged in using existing revenue from our water and electric customers to support the total cost of adding those two staff. If that's where we end up, if that's what we end up doing. Saying that, I don't think that at this time that we could depend upon state or federal dollars to cover the total cost of adding those two staff. I think that this is a very, and I hate to use the term because we're talking about water here, but it is a very fluid situation in terms of, I think we need to proceed in trying to align the value to our current customers, especially in the area of water supply and watershed management and water resource management in the community, as to how much we should, if you would, charge our current customers for broadening that work in water supply. At the same time, we have to decide how we can draw upon state and federal resources such as grants to pick up, if you would, that gap in how much can we legitimately charge our current customers and how much we're going to expend in broadening that effort. So, and on the broadband, fiber optics, energy, I think that we can legitimately look at a number of significant cost projects, such as our transmission system, rebuild, our construction of 2 of our substations, and a number of other projects that we legitimately can call upon our customers through capital project financing and project management to cover the cost of, whether it's an electrical or a civil engineer, or at least a staff person to support that. On the broadband and fiber optics specifically, I think this is where we go with staffing and where we go with physical, construction, ownership, operation of broadband and or fiber optics will depend a lot on how we partner with the Port of Bellingham and possibly even the City of Bellingham, on building that infrastructure and managing it and operating it. So that's a long answer, but I think that it'll be, if the commission sets a direction that's pretty firm on what we brought out in this memo, I think it'll be up to staff, myself and staff, to bring back to you that what do we think the staffing needs, our consulting needs will be to move forward with these 2 priorities, and then we need to identify what we think are the best ways to financially support that. I don't know if that makes sense.
What you said made a lot of sense. It was a long answer, but I thank you for explaining the nuances of what needs to happen. And obviously, if this was a crazy idea, we wouldn't have even entertained it. It's certainly within the realm of possibility, but there's work to be done, is what you're saying.
Yes. In regards to some of this, when we parse it out, when we take a look at additional support for water, our business is not just simply pumping and treating water. In this complex world that we're in, whether it's adjudication and watershed planning and that sort of thing, it's all required in order to support the work that we do. And having additional support to increasingly confront this more and more complex world, I think, is part of the cost of doing business. So I'm very supportive of that. When it comes to, I would say, the opportunity cost of energy or broadband energy, I think where we likely will be leading will be infrastructure, developing infrastructure at Cherry Point to support jobs. And I think that that's an opportunity cost that will not only help to support jobs, but build our business out there. So I think that we need to be prudent about how we deploy these resources, but I think that there's a business case and a community case to be built for both of these.
I have an additional comment.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to reinforce the point that you made, Commissioner McClure, about competency and capacity. In an organization that's about to go through some major high-level evolution due to retirements, there's also the importance of having plenty of organizational horsepower within the organization that's been trained up by senior leaders, and So basically to be able to support customers and not be grasping for help from outside to figure out what how we should be prioritizing, how we should be focusing. So
Yeah, yeah. Atul, did you have further comments?
no, thank you.
Mike, how about you?
Well, I'd like to begin by thanking Steve for putting together this memo, because when you look it over, read it, I really appreciate everything that we are able to do as a PUD with our staff, and I'm really impressed with it. So I thank Steve for that. As we look forward, I am concerned because the more I read about what's going on in our state, I've heard up to $8 billion lost in revenue so far. The governor is asking for different agencies to look at cutbacks. And I don't know how that's going to affect us, especially will there be grants is the biggest one. Are we going to lose support and resources from whether it's state or fed or even county maybe? So how do we move forward effectively? And I believe there is a request that the government agencies in Whatcom County get together and compare notes and see where we crisscross and how we could get rid of some of, I mean, everybody seems to run independently of each other, and yet we're all here to support the people. So how can we better use the resources we're given to serve our community? And so I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in how much loss we're going to get from the state, from support, because I think that's going to make it difficult for me to say, yes, let's just move forward with hiring, because I don't want to lose anything we've already gained. And yet we see things like broadband becoming a very important part in Whatcom County. I want to be a part of that, but are we the lead agency on that? Are we a lead agency on some of these other issues? What are our strengths and where should we maybe focus if it comes down to budget? So I am looking for more information, but appreciate very much what is being said and what we have before us. But I just can't just say, yes, let's move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like I said, I think what we're intending, we're not taking action today. We're intending to give Steve some input as they begin to put the more detailed portions of the budget together. So I think it's going to be important for us to give a fairly clear head nod about what that next step should be for Steve and staff, so that they can come back to us in subsequent meetings and we can really analyze what sort of budget impacts there have been. So I guess that's the question that I would ask us all to contemplate, to make certain that we're on the same page so that we don't leave any ambiguities going forward. But Mike, maybe if you could contemplate that just a little bit. I have a few comments and then we'll circle back around and see where we land. Steve, I was wondering, I'm referring to page 3 of your memo. We have the water resource management, number 2, broadband fiber optics. Number 3 is community solar. And I'm wondering if that ought not be aligned with something about infrastructure at Cherry Point to support clean energy. I'm wondering if that is a broader goal, which aligns a little bit more directly with additions to the budget, clean energy project at Cherry Point. Was there a reason that you narrowed that to community solar?
The only reason I did that was that when we literally had that discussion a couple meetings ago, community solar, in terms of each individual commissioners saying what would be their priorities, community solar was listed as third in terms of priorities, in terms of, one or two or more of the commissioners picking that. So that's why I listed it at all.
Okay. I guess I'd like to ask both Mike and Atul. I mean, again, this is not, this certainly, the way you've listed it doesn't limit our participation in other ideas. I would personally like to see that broadened a little bit, about supporting clean energy for future development at Cherry Point. Maybe Cherry Point is that the reason I bring that up, I guess, is more to ask a question of Mike and Atul. It feels to me like that's where we will be playing in the, in this particular portion of it. So it seems to me just to identify community solar as that only option feels like we're missing other opportunities. Do either of you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I forgot. Thanks for noticing that, because I had previously said that we should not just say community solar, we should leave in the option of community wind. So I don't know what words we use to capture that, but, and maybe a digester type of thing too, right?
So that would be one comment, Steve, is maybe broadening that a little bit from input from the commission that might be more about supporting clean energy and future development.
Perhaps community renewable energy.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then just one other thing on page 4, staffing necessities. The first one is energy. Should that not be energy/broadband? Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Is that person will probably be straddling both sides of those sectors?
Well, if you read that, I indicated add a staff person to support work on energy and telecommunication projects.
Okay.
So
Should that,
I just use the term telecommunications to as an umbrella over broadband, fiber optics, instead of listing them as individual elements of that. So, but and just to make sure that you understand that what I'm suggesting here is really looking at providing staff in the most appropriate way that we feel we can do that in terms of supporting, energy, telecommunication projects and initiatives. Whether that person that we would hire would, have the expertise and the experience working on energy projects, or that person would be having the experience and the expertise to work on broadband and fiber optics. We don't know at this point. What we're saying is that if we're looking at staffing resources to support, and now renewable energy and telecommunication projects, we're just going to have to decide what the best resource is that we need to bring on, if that makes sense.
okay. Yeah, I guess just referencing the description here, and this is a minor thing, I wondered if that title should be energy/telecom, but you think it should just be energy. Not a big deal. I just was trying to look for some alignment there.
Oh, we can, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe that what you will be at least budgeting for in this first draft would be not to bring both of these people on at the same time, but they would be sequenced, correct?
What we would do is develop a budget looking at what we think the potential cost for both of these positions would be, and then staging the hiring in terms of budget, staging the hiring for either one of those positions in a way that I would expect that we would probably budget full-time one of those positions January 1st, assuming that the budget would be approved and we would have the flexibility of going ahead and starting that hiring process even late in the year and bring someone on, the first quarter of the year, and then stage the second one sometime probably third quarter of next year. Not specifically, to identify at this time, which one would be the priority. It just that we would, for budget purposes, we would stage them that, the hiring in that manner. And I would assume that the person that we would bring on first would be in the, energy / telecommunication. That depends a lot on how quickly we will be able to bring together, an agreement with the Port of Bellingham on broadband and fiber optics, and where we are, by the end of November of this year, so that we can go ahead and start that process and staffing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I was thinking along the same lines, of course, formalizing that agreement with the Port of Bellingham and identifying roles and responsibilities is going to be an important first step and will help to inform, the attributes of the person that we bring on for that role.
The other thing to keep in mind, and especially on that position that we're talking about, energy, telecommunication, if we want to keep in mind that we have some senior staff that, with Brian Walters, even if we're able to keep Brian on for a couple more years, we need to identify very clearly how we retain, the expertise that Brian has brought to us in terms of energy contracts, with BPA, the changing, as we've discussed just this last meeting, our previous meeting about resources, how are we going to find additional resources other than BPA? I mean, the whole changing menu of energy resource supply management, and what Brian's position, if you would, needs to look like, in a couple of years. So we want to blend that, our ability to look at building that staffing support that Brian will someday will leave. And so we've got a person in place that can take up that mantle, and at the same time, look at, how we provide staffing for ongoing electrical projects in our core operations, but then how do we blend, the need to bring someone on for fiber optics and telecommunications. So
Great. So I'd like to hear again from everyone on this, so we make sure that we're speaking with one voice to the staff as we move forward, because these are big priorities, and I think consistent with what we have, what has led us to this point. So, Mike, you initially have registered some concerns. Do you want to speak to that a little bit and let us know what your thoughts are at this point?
Okay, as I said earlier, I mean, my concern is the budget and what might we lose? Because we do a lot with grants. And if we lose these grants, then where's that going to leave us? And we have so many things going on right now. I don't want to drop any of those to add or to make any changes. So I am concerned about the budget until I see some kind of a 2021 budget and how we can put these new staff into it. I'm concerned about that.
Okay.
But as I said earlier, if the different government agencies in Whatcom County are going to get together and discuss how we could work, maybe we would be a stronger county, a government, a community, if we came together. I mean, the city of Bellingham seems to have a pretty good system under broadband. Just using it as an example, I think it's Eric, and seems to have a good feeling for it, a good understanding. Could they be more of a lead in broadband for the county? Whether they want to do that or not, I don't know, probably not. But the Port of Bellingham has things to focus on, but they're willing to add fiber to their list, and we are too, because we see the importance of it. But are we the right people to be doing it, especially when we have to consider staff cuts? Not staff cuts, excuse me, it's budget cuts. So I look at the most highest priority right now. Steve says he's committed himself to 2021. I think Brian is a few more years beyond that, and other staff are maybe the same as Brian or beyond that, maybe for a total of 5 more years. So I think its highest priority right now is we need to figure out about Steve. We need to figure out, do we bring someone on right away, maybe doing other things for us, but also understanding the role of a general manager so that we do not lose anything that we've already gained by bringing someone totally new on. Does that make sense?
Mike, you may recall Steve mentioned that he would be willing to stay on to 2022 if that's the indication of the commission. We of course would need to take action on that by the end of this year to extend his contract, but that gives us a little additional flexibility. So if I understand you correctly, what you said is that you're willing to take a look at this first cut on the budget to see the budget impacts, but the staffing seems to make sense so long as we can get the priorities aligned within our budget. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that an accurate reflection?
It's close to what I'm thinking, but you know, I just really, I'm very pleased with what we have accomplished, but we haven't finished a lot of these that we're involved with, and we need to continue on. You know, whether it's water or broadband. Well, we want to get into broadband. Energy is a big one. Water. There's just so much we're doing. I just don't get the sense that, I don't have a strong, good sense that we're going to be able to continue on forward, because we have no idea what the next few months or the next year is going to bring us, what it's going to throw at us. No one ever expected for all of us to be meeting like this on meetings. No one ever expected to be wearing masks. This is all something that snuck up on us, and I can't seem to get a clear feeling of the future, and I don't want to really commit to it till we get more information, or I get more information.
And I think that's what we're asking staff to provide, is more information given the context of what Steve has set out for us. You know, keep in mind, you know, we're going to have several kicks at the can to analyze the budget, and of course, you know, we're going to know a lot more, hopefully by December, than we do now about what, you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic and budget considerations and things like that. I mean, we haven't made a final, but we've actually hired someone, and there's a lot of work to do between now and then in consolidating our agreement with the port. So I just want to make certain that we are giving the staff the direction that we want, or that we want, and with the understanding that we can't make decisions until we have more information. So we're just directing them to give us more information in the budget process. And I'm hoping that's consistent with what you're saying. I think in this next iteration of the budget, or the first pass that we see, we'll be able to ask staff to identify what the likelihood is of getting more grant money. You know, no one will know exactly what that is, but certainly we can ascertain an outcome, knowing that budgets at the state level are probably going to be cut in excess of 20%. So for the foreseeable future, that may be difficult to come by. But I guess that's the basic question that I'm asking, is based on the priorities that we've identified. Staff has said in order to adequately address these issues, these are the staffing positions that would be required. And I think that's the basic question now, is does this seem appropriate until we have an understanding of exactly what the budget impacts are going to be? That's the central question. Are you willing to have staff at least move forward into this next step of the budget process?
And I hear you saying that hiring more staff is your highest priority. Is that correct?
Oh, well, I that may be the outcome. I think my priorities, I think our priorities are reflected in the memo that Steve put together here. And in order to address these, it's going to require more staff, and we have not hired more staff for the last couple of years. We've done a very good job of kind of keeping it at main levels. No, so I wouldn't lead with that statement, but I think that's the outcome of the priorities that we have established and what we are being asked to get involved in by the community. So I guess, yeah.
So I'd like to add something here. And one of the things that we could be looking at is a situation where 2022 budget at the state level is more realistic than 2021 budgeting. And the reason is because the deliberation that needs to happen at the legislature, you know, with it out of session, between the legislature and the executive and all that, managing the budget, hasn't happened. It'll happen in the fall. And because of that, the implications, we may not actually be living in reality from budget perspectives for 2021, but somewhere or another for 2022, there's going to have to be a whole different set of work that's done that might, so the PUD has potentially a situation where we might deal with a level of support that we expected for water, energy, telecommunications, that even we're told that may realign itself for 2022. So perhaps one way to be sensitive to Commissioner Murphy's comments is to proceed in a way which has a certain amount of robustness and flexibility to adapt to sudden changes in the expected revenue coming from services relating to water, energy, and broadband. I'm not sure how to do that. That sounds like a hard thing to do, but have that at least in Steve's thinking about how to adapt to, let's say things end up very different than what we are currently seeing, because we've won a bunch of supporting grants on the waterfront in the last few months, as you all know. So I'm just suggesting that that we do something so to be more robust. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting a message from video isn't correct. Is that correct, Jeff?
See, that
is messed up.
I'm sorry.
Is my video?
You broke up a little bit.
That's correct. Something's wrong with your video, Atul. It looks like you have a piece of paper in front of it.
Okay, is this better?
That's better.
Okay,
That's
for
better.
some reason, I can't see myself. Normally I can't see it, but you can see me now.
We can see you now.
Okay, great. I'm sorry about that, Ann.
And Atul,
All right.
just for those listening, when you say on the waterfront, that's 2 words, not 1. We're not doing work on the waterfront, but on the waterfront, right?
Yes, thank you for covering my tail on that one, Jeff.
I don't want our partners at the port thinking we're all of a sudden competing with them. Yeah.
Could I just a couple comments, Commissioner? In terms of Commissioner Murphy's concerns about state funding and, future grants, yes, we have taken on the administration of several grants through the Watershed Management Board, and in the past few years, but we have allocated very, very little of those grant dollars coming through the Watershed Management Board and the Puget Sound Partnership, especially for staff, for our staff. And in fact, we're actually contributing to Becky Peterson's work on a couple of those grants on a small amount that the PUD is actually paying some of her costs to make sure that we are allocating as much of the grants to the projects and programs. So in the future, I would be less concerned about state cuts for grants that would impact our revenue, for staffing. I'd be more concerned about how we allocate current customer revenue, especially for water planning and water resource management, because of events that are taking place at Cherry Point, like, with Alcoa basically shutting down at the end of this month, and how that would impact our revenue. And also, with future development at Cherry Point in terms of other revenue through our water contracts out at Cherry Point, that could be changing in the next 3 months. It could be changing in the next 6 months. So overall, and the third thing is that, as I indicated earlier, some of the issues around staff replacement and staff retirement, if we would not take on additional initiatives like broadband, telecommunication, and renewable energy, we would need to be, over the next year or so, we need to bring on, staff replacement. And one of the things that we've sort of ignored over the last couple of years is this idea of, if you would, duplicating some of our staff in planning, for the transition and retirement. And that's just a cost factor that we have not looked at in terms of the last couple of years, but we need to face that no matter, if we don't take on an additional initiative. So,
Yeah, good point. I'd like to draw this conversation to a close, and I maybe would like to summarize the discussion so that staff does have direction going forward. And I'm wondering if it's fair to say that, Steve, what you have prepared, I think, is an accurate reflection of what we had discussed in terms of priorities. It feels to me like the staffing you have proposed as presented is a reflection of what we would need to do. It would be good to move forward to have staff prepare a budget based on these assumptions, with the acknowledgement of Commissioner Murphy's concerns about those budget impacts, so that we could make informed decisions as we start to review the budget for 2021. Mike, would that satisfy your concerns?
I will say yes to that. I mean, again, as I said earlier, I thanked Steve for this memo he gave us, all 4 pages of it. I want to be successful in all 4 and serving our community, but I also have to, I know we have to be realistic on how do we get there, and most of that's going to be driven by revenue and staff. I get that, but staff is a cost. So I'd like to hear from Steve and staff on how they plan to get us there. So yes, I'd be interested in moving forward with what you said.
Okay. Atul, does that represent your thinking as well?
Yes.
Good. Steve, does that give you definition of next tasks?
That's sufficient, and as you indicated, Commissioner, staff will take this along with all other discussions that we've already had and started in terms of budget preparation. And in October, we will be bringing you the first draft of the 2021 budget. And between now and then, as we always do, we reach out to our current customers, the Grandview system, as well as our irrigation customers, as well as the Cherry Point customers, asking them to project into 2021, any potential changes in, consumption of water, energy changes, and contract changes that they need to advise us on before the end of the year. We always do that. That'll help us look at the potential allocation of these additional costs, as well as the ongoing operational costs. And so by October, we should have, when we make that first presentation to you, we should have a much clearer idea on what these changes would require in terms of budget, and then potential other changes, especially our Cherry Point customers, how that could impact the budget, and get a better idea of how we would allocate, all those costs, so that you will have hopefully a much clearer picture as to what that would mean in terms of increases in our current customers' rates and/or other sources of funding.
Sounds good. Thank you for that. Thanks for putting this together. Good discussion. Just one point of clarification. I'm seeing the memo back up on the screen. Is there a way to get everybody's portraits back on the screen? Am I the only one seeing the memo?
I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
There you go.
Sounds well. Thanks, Steve. Let's move on to new business. Award a bid, new Ferndale substation standby generator purchase. Steve, is that you?
That'll be Brian.
Brian.
Brian's going to pass it on. Alec will actually handle this one.
Alec.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I was not connected to the audio, but I am now. And I'm not hearing myself, so I'll try not to yell. So, commissioners, good morning. This is our hopefully final equipment purchase for the construction of our Ferndale pump substation. And this is for the emergency backup generator. This bid went out and we received 3 bids, and there were a little bit of complications because while the 3 bids met the specification electrically. Our engineer wrote the spec in such a way that it added delivery of the equipment, the connection of fuel to the equipment, and the electrical conduits. And each bidder did not treat that identically. And so that led our engineer and John Littlefield to interview each of them and try and get a better, clear understanding of what they're proposing. We did see that bid from NC Power Systems, which is Caterpillar. They took exception to our contract language. And so for that reason, we deemed their bid non-responsive. And then the bid from Pacific Power Group is the lowest bid, but they did not include all the detail for delivery that Mills provided. So the Pacific Power Group bid was going to deliver the generator in 4 shipments and not be responsible for unloading and tying it up to the fuel and electrical, whereas Mills' electric bid did include that. And so based on the interviews and based on the bids submitted, our engineer has recommended we award this bid to Mills Electric.
So Alec, does that then, under the bid specifications, does that mean Pacific Power is non-responsive to the bid, or are we at risk of being challenged because they are the, you know, at least low bidder with their number, but not responsive to all the bid specifications?
Well, I think that with the interview and the understanding of the responsibility of you know, providing a crane to unload, and the responsibility to somewhat manage connecting a fuel to that, that was enough to make Mills' bid the better choice.
Okay.
Rolls-Royce, I don't know what Pacific Power's response will be.
It seems like, though, if we take action on this and accept the Mills Electric bid, isn't our only option to declare the low bidder non-responsive based on specifications? I guess I need a little coaching on this from John.
That's correct.
Yeah.
If you feel that's non-responsive, and we should, Alex should explain that again, and we should have that clarified. Just so everyone's clear on the non-responsiveness for the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
leaving ourselves open to some sort of action.
Yeah, and then I have, I suppose, am relying on the engineer to
Sure.
to determine this. And so, is it?
Do you have a memo from the engineer?
Yeah, it's attached to this action item.
Yeah.
Updated action item. Yeah, I'm trying to locate it again here.
I guess one thing that we probably would need to be clear on with Mills, was there anything in their bid that was non-responsive? In other words, did they meet all of the bid specifications?
Yes, they did meet all the bid specifications.
Okay.
And
so,
and they yeah, they provided I guess, you know, the delivery was provided.
okay. So based on the memo that BKI provided, I think that probably would need to be fleshed out a little bit to identify exactly what items were not met in the specifications. I think there would need to be a declaration of non-responsiveness.
This is Brian. Based on my review of it, they would have been the lowest bid would have been non-responsive because of their, in the interview process, the refusal to arrange for the unloading of the equipment. The fact that the equipment was coming in 4 separate shipments, meaning each shipment would have to be unloaded on site.
Yeah.
They were unwilling to do that. So it's going to be more burden and cost for staff to make arrangements outside of the bid for handling the equipment once it arrives.
Yeah, no, I think that just, I mean, it all makes perfect sense as long as we've got it fully documented. And the winning bid is nearly $300,000 in the engineer's estimate. So it's all good. So the question is, can we take action on this today to accept the bid with the understanding that the balance of this process will take place? Steve, does that make sense to you?
Yes, I think it's appropriate.
Okay, good.
Memo to me is pretty, Jeff, as well. The BTI memo. So.
Okay.
I'm reading that again now.
Mike, do you have any comments or questions?
Brian or Alec, our memo says here for 559,522. But when I read the memo from BKI, they say they support or make a recommendation to go with the generator for 924,522. Why is there extra money? What's the difference?
That's a good catch.
No, it's an incorrect number. It should be the 959,522.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for.
So I think that the motion can say that it, with modifications to the supporting documentation.
Correction to the.
Yeah, if there are no further comments, I'll take a motion.
Go ahead and make that a motion to approve the award for the new Ferndale substation to Mills.
Second.
Well, that's just the purchase of the standby generator system. Correct?
Okay.
You approve.
It's not a public work, it's just purchase of the system.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of the standby generator system for the Ferndale substation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mike, did I hear you, Mike? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
And that is carried. Very good. Thank you. Approve work order number 14 with Brown and Kaiser. Brian?
Commissioners, yes, Brian will take this one.
Okay.
Work order 14, if approved, provides for BKI providing us services in the design and construction of the upgrade at the refinery substation that's needed to meet load growth at Phillips 66. So their scope of services is the entire, they're assisting with doing the design engineering, helping with the bid spec, providing construction oversight when we get to that stage, and then participating as well in commissioning, testing, and the final sign off on that project. I will note a couple of things. The amount of money covers quite a lot of hours, and particularly in two areas. One is in preparing a step-by-step construction plan, because as we've done in the past, we need to do a lot of the work in that substation while the substation is still energized. So it takes a lot of coordination amongst PUD staff, the refinery staff, and then also our engineer to make sure everything comes together right and we can keep the refinery online while we're doing the construction work. The second piece, there's a lot of hours in there that may or may not be used, but a lot of on-site visits by the engineer to support staff in various stages of the project. Here again, this is a very important project for us. We can't drop our customer while we're doing the work. And so we felt we needed to have those hours in there in case we need to call on that engineering support at different phases of that project. The project will culminate, there'll be a refinery turnaround, and then we'll do the final cutover at that time when the refinery is down. So it's a tricky project. We've done them in the past, but it takes more engineering support than a normal construction project. I think you will have noted that with the memo, there is a detailed scope of work document that BKI provided, and it gives you a pretty thorough breakdown of their estimated hours for different tasks that will be completed by them. So with that, I can stop and answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, I appreciated the detailed breakdown. It's a very thorough scope of work that they've identified here. It's a big sum of money. Brian, do you have a sense relative to other similar scopes of projects that we've done, how this stacks up from that point of view?
As far as engineering costs, it's a little bit higher. We're putting the cost of the total project in the $5 to $6 million range. So that would put this in there at 15 to 20% of full project cost. One of the things that we've asked BKI to do as one of their first tasks is to revisit, do an order of magnitude cost estimate for the entire project. They did that earlier on when we were evaluating different options for upgrading the substation, but now we want to have another look at that.
Yeah.
So we'll have a much better idea of where we stand after we do that. But
Yeah.
I put it a little bit on the high side, 15 to 20%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and this is all within our 2020 budget. So.
Yes, and since the project overlaps in the,
Yeah.
work won't even begin, we'll order equipment next year. You'll see that included in the 2021 budget that you'll be reviewing.
Yeah. Good.
We've got it covered.
Good.
Here in 2020.
Any questions or comments?
The main question I have is the standard language we have is that there's no fiscal impact. Is that, can you clarify that? Because in the budget, was this level of outside engineering always part of the plan?
We have funds and administrative engineering to cover, and all that will happen this year, Commissioner, this month, is engineering work. So the ordering of equipment and the actual construction will be 21, 22. So we have adequate funds to cover engineering this year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mike, any questions?
No, I have no questions. I've read over everything and understand the reasoning. So no.
Okay, good. Is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve work order number 14 for engineering services with Brown and Kaiser.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve work order number 14 with Brown and Kaiser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that is carried. Thank you. Tracy, cancellation of warrants.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. This is just the annual resolution to cancel warrants that are over a year old, and there was 2 of them.
Okay. Very good. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 775.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 775. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I momentarily lost my place. Solar flare. General manager report.
Commissioners, I just had a couple of things real quickly. We continue to work with the Port of Bellingham on development of a interlocal agreement or a cooperative agreement, whatever form that's going to take. And we had a good work session. I believe it was about a week ago. It was led by John Sitkin, and we had a couple of staff from the Port of Bellingham on, also their legal counsel, Les Reardon, and the port's executive director to talk about what the form of that agreement should be and the details that we both the PUD and the port identified as critical, in terms of what we need to identify in such an agreement, so that it gives both parties the flexibility of decision making along the way as to what roles the individual entities should take on if we conclude that partnership agreement. And I believe we're supposed to meet again later this week or early next week to hopefully put some flesh on the bones, if you were, so that we can bring that back to you hopefully sometime in September, along with going to the Ports Commission on what that partnership should look like. So, John, you want to?
Well, I just want to clarify for the commission that, we have an existing waiver of a conflict to work on the interlocal agreement to set the general structure. We represent the port, as you know, as their general counsel, and the PUD as general counsel. So, and just trying to set up the collaborative structure of how you would work on whatever plan it might be, we said we would do that if there was a waiver of a conflict of interest. And there is. If I see a conflict, we'll be backing out of that. And so at this point, it's just trying to understand the roles and relationships and who's going to do what, and it comes back to you for approval. So I think that there's still some, I urged this meeting because I felt that there was some, best way to put it, some spinning of the wheels and trying to get traction of who's doing what, where is things going to go, what's the business plan around this, how is this going to be structured, with mindful that, if you just have a philosophy of if you build it, they will come, you're falling back into the infinite days, and trying to get more of a, how is this rollout of the various segments going to occur with some anticipated customers and revenues? You have some of the fiber optic broadband providers who will not allow folks onto their system. You have an open access requirement, but it really doesn't become functional in a marketplace for some fiber. Some entities will allow you to lease some fiber. Some is going to be a fiber build to go through the various segments without really a concrete concept of what the model might be. And I think it's a little bit of a push to try to get there. And what is the PUD's role in that going to be? Is it technical support, strategic support, financial support, combination of all those? I think that's where the discussion will lead.
Good. Thank you for taking that necessary next step. I think that this is all going to be good food for thought when we get into our meeting in September. So this will help to solidify
Right.
the relationship.
I don't want to miss the opportunity to get on my soapbox and say what we learned. One of the big things we learned was the importance of understanding the market. So I think we should do. I really want to repeat again. We should do a feasibility study to understanding the market, so that we don't take a build it and they will come approach. And I don't know if that directly relates to this agreement, but I had to get on my soapbox.
No, I think that very much is. I think that whether you call it a business plan, a feasibility study, within that would be, you take it to different levels. Okay, we think there's a market. You think it might have some feasibility. What's the model? Is it a combination of IRUs, leasing for certain fiber segments, building some? Where's the resource? Is it a grant based? Is it revenue customer base, who's the real issue is everyone's concerned about. You know, I heard it last night in Blaine at their council meeting, is getting that last mile fiber to the underserved areas. Well, the private operators have no incentive to do that. So how is that going to come about? Where's that approach going? There's just so many different pieces with moving parts of what the community's goal is. I think that refined business plan feasibility study combination is an appropriate step.
May I make a minor modification, propose a minor modification to your statement about Blaine?
Sure.
What I propose is the private operators tell us that they have no incentive, because by nature, a private operator makes their decisions privately. And so what they tell us is what we have to go by. I think that we know a private operator's intentions or their rationale for making a decision, because that's contrary to the definition of a private operator. They won't tell us why they're making the decision they're making or why they're making the communication they're making.
I can tell you that Comcast, in the context up in Blaine and trying to get to some of the isolated areas, have said there's no return on the investment. The revenue models don't support the extension of the internet services there. So that's
right.
Comcast, anyways, has been acknowledging that.
So in
ISP.
In regards to the feasibility study, we participated with the port in the feasibility study last year. That was published at the beginning of last year. So really what we're talking about is a business plan, correct, Steve?
Yeah,
John?
it's not taking it to the next level.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I think there's also, I think that,
Sorry,
you know,
Steve,
the recent discussion as of yesterday with the city of Bellingham and the city council, the public works director was, directed or supported in moving ahead with the city of Bellingham developing their business plan for fiber optics within the city. They had allocated, I believe, up to $100,000 to conduct that, and they are forming an advisory group within the city to advise Public Works and the City Council on moving ahead. I think that with that direction that they've taken now, I do think that we need to have, a further discussion between the port, the PUD, and the City of Bellingham on looking at the entire county in terms of not just developing a business plan, but stepping back without causing a major pause in moving ahead with the whole concept of getting service to the broader community, but stepping back and having a discussion about what are our collective goals. That it's not just developing a fiber optic network, and it's also getting that last mile service to the end user, and it's also looking at within the cities and the broader community. I think it really requires us to step back. Yes, we participated in this feasibility study, but that feasibility study really was focused on a fiber optic network around Whatcom County. Things have evolved and changed since that work was done, and I think that it would be worthy of us, if we want to partner with the port and the city, to really step back and say what are our goals and what's our mission. 5 years from now, what do we want to accomplish?
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I want to echo that, and then also say that they reinforce what John said, which is the granularity, the next step. So there's a lot of questions that weren't addressed or answered in the work that in the previous study, and not that there's anything wrong with what was done in the past. As we continue to proceed forward, we need to continue to study as we go.
Steve, you'll be bringing this forward first meeting in September or second meeting?
I can't I'm not ready to commit to
Okay.
either one of those at this point.
At least the second meeting in September, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Do you have anything else?
Just a note that we have at the request of BP, corporate BP, led by a team out of BP Cherry Point. We've had a couple of discussions with them about a potential large solar facility out at Cherry Point. They being corporate BP and their subsidiary called Light Source, BP Light Source. This is an organization that focuses, or part of their corporation that focuses on renewable energy, talking about a potential solar project at Cherry Point that BP would either construct themselves or through Light Source have someone construct. They have asked us to just talk with them about the potential for the PUD to be involved in a way that they would be looking at generating energy, of course, off of that solar facility, and a portion of that may be available to move out into the grid and either be sold by them or potentially the PUD could be asked to buy and then sell that a portion of that resource coming off of the facility. And in order to do that, it would require a connection to the BPA transmission grid. And so they've just opened the discussion with us about whether or not we'd be interested in playing a role of that nature, the connection, possibly building a substation to serve the facility. And so we've had a couple of discussions with them and we're waiting now for BP to provide us more very specific criteria in terms of what the size of the facility could be and how much, if any, of that resource would be available to be put out into the grid. So we'll update you as we know more.
Well, and to the degree you value the input here, Steve, where you're at is just exploring, I understand. But if there's any confusion from this commissioner, I'm very supportive of what you're doing. So.
Steve,
Well,
Steve and I met with a group of them via Zoom a couple of weeks ago just to get some preliminary idea of their interest. It is a very preliminary discussion, but I think it could lead to some exciting possibilities for us developing infrastructure in Cherry Point that could have some legs for other developments. So it'll be interesting to see where the points of intersection are.
Well, and it's possible that if there's an amount of that resource would be available to move out, off of Cherry Point, if that's the way to put it, it could further the discussion about is that a resource that's available for resale through Puget Sound Energy to the green tag? Could it be part of a community solar resource? We don't know any of that yet, but I think that there are a number of opportunities that if a project like that would be developed at Cherry Point and the connection to the grid, there's a lot of opportunities that we could certainly consider and what role we may be able to play, not just the infrastructure.
Yeah, very good. We'll move on. Thank you, Steve. Anything further?
That's all I had.
Hearing dates, you want a meeting dates, Steve?
Pardon?
Do you get all the questions answered on the meeting date on September 8th that you needed?
Yes. No, we need to, it indicated that your next regular meeting is September 8th. I am not going to be available that morning. So if the commission wants to continue to have the meeting that morning as regular scheduled, just know I'm not going to be available. My suggestion was, and initially, just go ahead and proceed with the meeting, but we also have a tentative meeting scheduled, an executive session on September 10th. And my thought was if the commission would consider resetting the regular meeting from September 8th to September 10th, but starting it at 9 o'clock.
Okay. I believe we would need to take action on that today, correct? And I
You
think,
want to set that special meeting.
yeah, and everybody's schedules lined up with that, correct, Mike O'Toole?
I hadn't confirmed because of my not being online for the couple of days, but yes, I'm confirming that now.
Okay. Could I take a motion? Could I get a motion moving our regularly scheduled meeting on September 8th to the 10th, starting at 9 o'clock?
John, do we need to word that differently?
Well, no, it's a special meeting on the 10th. It's commencing at 9 o'clock. The agenda for that will come out. Will be published out in accordance with rules. There will be an executive session to discuss potential litigation. And I'm not sure, Steve, if you have other things on the agenda like approval of minutes or things like that, but the primary matter would be an extended executive session on litigation.
Yeah, so if you moved it to September 10th, the regular meeting, we'd have an hour to do our regular business, your regular business, and then we'd go into executive session at 10 o'clock.
Would it be beneficial to keep the regular meeting on the 8th and just have the 10th session be focused on, what's happening, maybe more involved subject, or you think it's manageable to do it all on the 10th?
I think it's manageable to do it all. And
Okay.
I mean, the only other option would, not the only other option, but you could start the meeting, the regular meeting at 8:30 instead of 9 o'clock. That's, that would give you ample time to discuss regular business, so.
Why don't we do that, just so we're not pressed, even if we have to take a more extended break before we start our executive session?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Tell me again, what's the hours for the 10th then, from 8 to what?
8:30, and what I'm hearing, 8:30 to plan on probably noon.
Till noon?
As a guesstimate, yeah. I think the executive session starting at 10-ish will last 2 hours.
But the 8:30 is when you want. So I'll make a motion that we cancel September 8th regular meeting and have it on September the 10th, starting at 8:30.
Perfect.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to move our regularly scheduled meeting to September 10th, beginning at 8:30. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That is approved. Thank you. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Deshmani, would you like to begin?
Yeah, I've got just two things. I'll just mention them briefly. And one is Energy Northwest is happening again this week. Some good news on their front is that they're quite likely to get federal funding for a exploration and next generation nuclear technology, some pilot facilities. Energy Northwest is, because they have such a good track record, are a very desirable suitor for new technology developers in the world of nuclear. We've got several homegrown in the Northwest. The Northwest is one of the leading areas for figuring out how to make nuclear work again, as far as new plant technologies. And so it's quite likely that they will get in Richland the funding to host one of those technologies, so for a pilot plant.
Is that it?
The second item was on the front of testing. I continue to do ad hoc testing of speeds of upload and download, which I'll be providing in a informal report to the commission of broadband speeds. But suffice it to say, it's a lot less than advertised. Pretty much, that's the punchline. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Mike?
I've had the opportunity to speak to, well, at least one farmer. Sad news to me that, some farmers are leaving Whatcom County in the dairy. I've talked to a berry farmer who says that he's removing raspberries and going to blueberries. So maybe blueberries seems to be the future of Whatcom County. Henry would probably give me the best update because I should talk to him. Outside of our own county, I was shocked to find that PUD, Snohomish County PUD, is having someone go around cutting down power poles with chainsaws or damaging them. I can't imagine anybody risking their life with a power pole cutting it down. So they are having vandalism done there. In Chelan, I'd like us to follow Chelan a little because the Chelan PUD is moving forward quicker with their fiber to reach out to more of their community just because of the need. And they're investing, I think it was 25 million to push this along to serve more of their community. So I thought that might be something for us to watch besides other PUDs. Add that to our list and seeing how they're doing, reaching out and accomplishing their goals too, for us, just for information. That's it.
Very good. I just very briefly wanted to make everyone aware of a letter that we have been asked to sign. You may recall several months ago, we reached out to the port with the idea of creating some sort of clean energy park development on a parcel of land out at Cherry Point to kind of stimulate a little different direction for industry, and if that would be a possibility to partner on something like that. We had a couple of conversations with the port, specifically Don Goldberg and Rob Fix about that idea, and initially there seemed to be a level of development. Then with COVID, it kind of went on the back burner. The idea was resurrected with the closure of Alcoa about what local governments could do to stimulate some sort of development, and specifically jobs development. Not only on the Alcoa property, depending on what Alcoa decides to do, whether it's going to be mothballed or truly closed, but perhaps even on the SSA property adjacent. So lo and behold, a letter came out, or a letter was proposed, as I said, written by Don Goldberg, describing this potential concept, and all the mayors were asked to sign it, as well as the county executive, the port, and the PUD, sent to Alcoa supporting the concept of some sort of development on their site. And that's as far as that has gone right now. I don't know if the letter has gone in. I think it may have gone to Alcoa last week, but I did add my signature in support of that concept. So I wanted to make everybody aware of that. I think it could be a very exciting proposal. It's at a very initial stage right now, really at the talking stage. So whether or not it'll get legs or not, but it could be an exciting opportunity for Cherry Point. I think with the discussions that are going around in the land use side of Cherry Point, certainly creating certainty in the entitlements out there is going to be a big part of attracting development, out there. So anyway, we'll keep you apprised of that if we hear more.
Could we get a copy of that letter?
Do we have a copy of that letter?
Yes, I do. I'll scan it and send it out. And it can, yes.
Sounds good. Great. Okay, I think that concludes commissioner reports, public comment. Ann, is there anybody that has indicated an interest in sharing a public comment?
Rick Miracle? Oh, hi, Rick. Go ahead and talk.
Good morning. Regarding Steve's comment about the solar project at BP and having PUD provide for that, it seems to me far more logical that they would transmit any power generated away from the site using the existing PUD connections. I recall that BP in the past has used the PUD to gain leverage in negotiations with PSE. That was during the power crisis back around Y2K. And I'm just wondering whether or not in reality what they're proposing to you is really nothing more than attempt to gain leverage. It doesn't seem to make sense to build a whole new duplicate infrastructure when the infrastructure already exists to that site. So something just to keep in the back of your mind as you go forward with this, and to not to get into it too far financially, only to have BP back out in the end.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick.
Looks like that's all.
And that is it. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We are going to have an executive session. John, regarding potential litigation. John, do you have a sense?
Yep, and that invite's up on your, that invite is up on your, that invite is in your calendar, and we'll be going over there, and we have someone else waiting to join in.
Okay, and how long?
Another council. I'm going to say, Steve, what do we think? A half hour?
I would
45
think
minutes?
no more. I would think no more than 45 minutes. Let's use 45 minutes, and if it's less than that, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Taking any action?
No actions anticipated.
And can we take a 3-minute break and then join in the executive session?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
I'll go over and start it.
I'm going to bring us out of executive session back into our regular meeting.
See if I can-
I have 11:07. I'm not aware of any further business. So at this time,
I'll
I'm
make a-
going to close it.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. I don't need a motion to close the meeting. I
No.
can just close it. I'll close it at 11:07 then.
Great, thank you.
So okay. Thank you,
Adjourned at
everyone.
11:07.
Yes.